The council chamber of the Galactic Assembly buzzed with an unsettling energy. Delegates from across the universe had gathered in a grand hall, the walls shimmering with holographic projections of their homeworlds. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation and concern as the council prepared to address a crisis that threatened the very fabric of interstellar peace. At the center of it all stood Silara, a tall, graceful being from the Aelorian race, her skin glimmering like the night sky. She had been chosen to deliver a crucial address, one that could alter the course of galactic history. As she stepped to the podium, her heart raced. The gathering of alien species, some humanoid, others resembling creatures from humanity's darkest nightmares, watched her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the information she was about to share. "Esteemed delegates," Silara began, her voice resonating through the hall, steady yet urgent. "I stand before you today to address a grave concern, the unpredictable and alarming behavior of humanity. Their actions threaten not only their own species but the delicate balance of our galactic community." Images flickered to life behind her, showcasing recent incidents involving humans. There was footage of a human diplomatic ship accidentally firing upon an alien vessel during a routine meeting. Another clip showed a reckless human military exercise near a populated alien planet, sending waves of panic through its inhabitants. The murmurs in the crowd intensified, a cacophony of disbelief and apprehension. Silara pressed on, her tone unwavering. "These events are not isolated. They are part of a troubling pattern that has emerged over the past few years. Humanity has achieved technological advancements at an unprecedented pace, but with this progress has come a dangerous arrogance, a belief that they can act without consequence." As she spoke, Silara's mind flashed back to the fateful first contact between humans and the Elathians, where miscommunication led to violence and destruction. It had been a brutal lesson in the cost of misunderstanding, one that still echoed throughout the galaxy. The faces of those lost haunted her, urging her to convey the urgency of the situation. A hand shot up from the corner of the room, belonging to a delegate from the reptilian Zarkan race. "Why should we care about their madness?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Let them self-destruct. We have our own worlds to protect." "Because, my friend," Silara replied, her eyes narrowing, "their madness could engulf us all. If humanity continues down this path, we risk not only our alliance but the very survival of our species. We must act before it's too late." The murmurs grew louder, the tension palpable. The delegates exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement while others scoffed at her warnings. Silara sensed a division forming, a split between those who understood the threat and those who dismissed it as paranoia. Just as she was about to continue, the holographic display flickered, revealing a chaotic scene of a human colony in disarray. A voice echoed through the chamber, crackling with urgency. "This is a message from a rogue faction of humans. We declare our independence. No more subservience to alien races." Gasps rippled through the assembly, and Silara's heart sank. The rogue faction's declaration of war was a stark confirmation of her fears. It was clear. Humanity was not just losing its grip on sanity, it was splintering into dangerous factions willing to ignite conflict. With the council at a boiling point, Silara knew the time for debate was over. "We must unite," she implored. "If we do not take action now, we may find ourselves at the mercy of a species that has forgotten the very meaning of coexistence." As her words hung in the air, Silara felt a growing sense of urgency. If the galaxy was to survive, she would need allies, human and alien alike, to confront the storm that was brewing on the horizon. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence as Silara's words lingered in the air. The tension was thick, palpable as delegates exchanged worried glances, weighing the implications of her warning. The alien races, once united by a fragile peace, now faced a dark realization. Humanity was spiraling into chaos, and its instability threatened them all. An elderly delegate from the tranquil planet of Veridonia rose, her voice shaking with age and conviction. We cannot ignore this threat. We must intervene before humanity's madness consumes them, and us with it. Her words sparked a ripple of agreement among some, while others shifted uneasily, uncertain of the path forward. Silera seized the moment. I propose that we form a coalition dedicated to stabilizing humanity. We need a strategy, an outreach program that shows them the consequences of their actions and the importance of cooperation. The assembly nodded, a murmur of agreement growing louder. Yet not everyone was convinced. The Zarkan delegate, a towering figure with scales glistening in the soft light of the chamber, growled in dissent. Why should we risk our own species for one that clearly cannot manage its affairs? They will only drag us down with them. His words sparked an uproar among the crowd, with voices raised in disagreement and fear. Just as the assembly threatened to devolve into chaos, a holographic screen flickered to life, displaying the chaotic scene from the human colony. Alien citizens were shown fleeing as flames engulfed the settlement, ignited by skirmishes between human factions. This is not merely a human issue, Silera urged, her voice rising above the din. If we allow this conflict to fester, we risk a war that could spill across the galaxy. We must act. With a reluctant consensus beginning to form, Silera felt a flicker of hope. Yet just as the delegates prepared to discuss a united response, a loud disembodied voice echoed through the chamber. This is a warning to all who oppose us. The Earth is no longer bound by your decrees. We will take what is ours. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the assembly in stunned silence. Silara's heart raced as she processed the implications of this rogue faction. They were not only declaring war on the coalition, but also inviting chaos into the galaxy, seeking to sow distrust and division. We need to find a way to communicate with the rational humans, she declared, determination surging through her. There are still those among them who believe in peace. We can't lose hope. Just then, a familiar voice broke through the chatter. Perhaps I can help. It was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a renowned psychologist and diplomat, known for her efforts in human-alien relations. The room turned to her, surprised but intrigued. I've been studying the psychological impacts of their rapid technological advancements. If we can understand what drives these rogue elements, we may find a way to reach the hearts of those who still believe in cooperation. Silara's eyes lit up. You have the knowledge we need. We must work together to counter this madness. A plan began to form in her mind. Elena's insights, combined with her own experience, could bridge the gap between their worlds. With renewed vigor, the delegates agreed to establish a task force, led by Silara and Elena, to gather intelligence and forge connections with moderate human factions. However, the Zarkan delegate remained skeptical, muttering about the futility of their efforts. Yet the majority rallied behind the cause, recognizing that hope lay in collaboration rather than isolation. As the meeting concluded, Silara and Elena exchanged a determined glance. The stakes had never been higher, but they were ready to face the impending storm. They knew that to prevent an all-out war, they would need to navigate the murky waters of human psychology, convince the rational factions to rise against the chaos, and ultimately remind humanity of the strength that lay in unity. Stepping out into the galactic corridor, Silara felt the weight of her mission pressing down on her. The fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders, and as they moved forward into the unknown, she vowed to fight for a future where understanding and compassion prevailed over madness and despair. The sterile halls of the Earth Research Institute buzzed with the frenetic energy of scientists and diplomats. Dr. Elena Rodriguez paced her cluttered office, her mind racing with the implications of the warning from the Galactic Assembly. Papers were strewn across her desk, charts and graphs detailing the psychological effects of technological acceleration, while holographic images of recent incidents flashed intermittently on her terminal. Her team had been studying the mental toll that rapid advancements were taking on humanity, but they had never anticipated the chaos that would follow. With the news of the rogue faction declaring war on the Galactic Coalition, Elena knew they were in uncharted territory. Elena's assistant, a young researcher named Max, burst through the door, his face pale. "Dr. Rodriguez. The news. It's all over the Holonets. They're calling for a revolution, and they're blaming the aliens for humanity's problems." Elena's heart sank. The rogue faction had already begun their campaign of misinformation, preying on fear and insecurity. "We need to get ahead of this," she said, her mind racing with ideas. "If we don't counteract their narrative, we could see a split among humans that would jeopardize everything." Max nodded, visibly shaken. "But how do we reach them? They're not listening to reason. They think collaboration with aliens is treason." Just then, Elena's terminal chimed with an incoming message. It was a video call from Lara, and her heart leaped. "Dr. Rodriguez, can you hear me?" The alien delegate's voice was steady but tinged with urgency. "Lara, yes. I was just reviewing the situation. It's worse than we thought," Elena replied, her voice trembling slightly. "The rogue faction is gaining momentum. We need to get a message out that counteracts their fear-mongering. If we can reach the moderate humans, perhaps we can convince them to stand up against this madness." Lara's ethereal features shifted, a hint of concern passing over her face. "Time is of the essence. We must also gather intelligence on this rogue faction, understand their motivations, what drives them to such extremes." Elena paused, considering the question. "I have some theories based on our research. The rapid technological advancements have fostered a sense of insecurity. Many believe that alien civilizations threaten their autonomy, leading to a backlash against anything perceived as foreign. I need you to gather a coalition of like-minded humans. We will create a united front. If we can show them the benefits of collaboration, we may have a chance to quell this rebellion." Lara urged. "Agreed. I'll reach out to some contacts, leaders who believe in cooperation," Elena said, her determination solidifying. "But we also need to address the underlying fears. A joint task force with representatives from both sides might help foster understanding." As they planned their next steps, the two women realized they would need to work quickly. The rogue faction was actively sowing seeds of discord, and the longer they waited, the deeper the division would grow. Elena and Lara decided to host a summit, inviting key human leaders and alien representatives to discuss the potential for collaboration and healing. They set a date, and as the details began to unfold, Elena felt a surge of hope. Meanwhile, the rogue faction continued its aggressive tactics, rallying supporters with fiery speeches and promises of a pure, independent humanity free from alien influence. They portrayed Lara and her allies as threats to human sovereignty, framing the upcoming summit as a trap to ensnare dissenters. As the days passed, Elena and her team worked tirelessly, crafting messages and preparing for the summit. They set up virtual town halls to educate the public on the importance of unity, utilizing every resource at their disposal. The campaign gained traction, but just as they began to see glimmers of success, disaster struck. Late one night, as Elena worked late in the lab, she received a distress signal from one of her contacts. "Dr. Rodriguez, the rogue faction is attacking the summit venue. They're targeting anyone who supports cooperation with aliens." Panic coursed through her veins. "We need to evacuate the venue immediately," she shouted, her heart racing. With a small team, Elena rushed to warn the summit participants, knowing that if they failed to act swiftly, their chance for peace could slip away forever. As chaos unfolded, Elena realized that the battle for humanity's future had begun, not just against the rogue faction, but against the fears and prejudices that threatened to consume them all. Elena's heart raced as she sprinted through the bustling halls of the Earth Research Institute, her mind racing with the urgent need to reach the summit venue. The chaos surrounding the rogue faction's attack loomed over her, a dark cloud that threatened to engulf any hope of uniting humans and aliens against the encroaching madness. "Max," she shouted, finding her assistant in the midst of the fray. "We need to get the participants out of there. Where's the nearest evacuation point? Max's face was pale, his hand shaking as he gestured down a corridor. There's an emergency exit that leads to the underground transit. It's our best shot to get everyone out quickly. Elena nodded, determination coursing through her veins. As they rushed toward the exit, the sound of distant explosions reverberated through the building, sending waves of fear coursing through the crowd. She could hear the panicked voices of summit participants echoing through the halls, mingling with the shouts of the rogue faction members outside, rallying their followers with promises of liberation. We can't let them intimidate us, Elena urged Max, her voice steely. We must stay calm and focused. The future of humanity depends on this. Just as they reached the emergency exit, they were met by a small group of delegates, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear. Celara stood at the front, her expression a mix of concern and resolve. Elena, we need to secure the exit. The rogue faction is mobilizing a group to intercept us. Celara, we need to get everyone out. Elena insisted, feeling the weight of the situation press down on her. If they see us trying to escape, they'll only grow more aggressive. Celara's eyes glinted with determination. Then we must create a diversion. I'll take a few of my guards and confront them. You lead the delegates to safety. Elena felt a chill at the thought of sending Celara into danger, but she understood the necessity. Be careful. We'll meet at the rendezvous point underground. With a resolute nod, Celara signaled to her guards, and they fanned out, preparing to confront the incoming threat. Elena turned to the frightened delegates. Stay close to me. We're going to move quickly and quietly. Follow my lead. As they slipped through the exit, the sound of chaos erupted behind them. Elena led the group down dimly lit corridors, their footsteps echoing ominously. Just as they reached the underground transit station, an explosion rocked the building, sending vibrations through the floor. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, and Elena's heart raced as she pushed everyone forward. Keep moving, she urged, her voice rising above the cacophony. The group squeezed into the transit pod just as more explosions echoed in the distance, sealing the doors behind them. In the confined space, Elena's mind raced. They were not just fleeing but fighting for the future of humanity, a humanity that had the potential for both greatness and destruction. She knew they needed to regroup and plan their next move. As the transit pod shot through the underground tunnels, Elena's thoughts returned to Celara. She hoped the alien delegate was safe. The risks they faced were monumental, but she understood that they were not alone. If they survived this, they could still make their case for peace and unity. When the pod finally came to a halt at the rendezvous point, they emerged into a stark underground facility bustling with activity. Emergency protocols had kicked in, and soldiers were stationed at every exit, monitoring the situation. Elena quickly gathered her team and the delegates, who were visibly shaken but still standing resolute. We need to regroup and assess our options, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Our mission hasn't ended. We must reach out to the remaining leaders who believe in cooperation. As they strategized, the security team received reports of escalating violence outside the Institute. The rogue faction was growing bolder, claiming that their actions were a necessary purge against what they deemed foreign influence. The atmosphere in the room turned somber as Elena and the delegates recognized the growing divide within humanity. We have to make a stand, Elena declared, her voice firm. If we don't fight for unity now, we may lose everything. We must show the world that the future lies in cooperation, not chaos. As they laid out their plan, the weight of the moment pressed heavily on them. The future of their species hung in the balance, and they were on the front lines of a battle that would determine whether humanity would embrace its potential or succumb to madness. The underground facility hummed with tension as Elena and the remaining delegates gathered around a central command table. Holographic displays projected the latest intel on the rogue faction's movements, showcasing their rapid escalation into violence. Tensions ran high as they debated their next steps, the stakes of their decisions growing more critical by the minute. Elena stood at the forefront, her eyes scanning the faces of her fellow leaders, a mix of humans and aliens. "We need to get our message out to the public," she said firmly, pointing at the hologram. "If we can counter the rogue faction's narrative, we may still have a chance to rally moderate voices within humanity." A robust delegate from the Elysian race, his skin glimmering with bioluminescent patterns, frowned. "But how can we reach the people when they are being manipulated by fear? The rogue faction has already spread their message far and wide, painting us as the enemy." Another delegate, a human representative, leaned forward. "We must create a broadcast that shows the truth, the benefits of cooperation, and the disastrous consequences of division. We need to show humanity what they stand to lose if they allow these extremists to dictate their future." Elena nodded, grateful for the support. "Exactly. We can leverage the influence of social media platforms to spread our message. If we can reach even a fraction of the population, we may spark a change in sentiment." As they discussed the plan, a loud crash reverberated through the facility. The lights flickered, and a panicked voice echoed over the intercom. "Security breach. The rogue faction has infiltrated the underground. Everyone, prepare for lockdown." Adrenaline surged through Elena's veins. "We need to fortify our position," she shouted. "Max, gather our tech experts. We need to set up defenses and secure communications." The group sprang into action, moving quickly to prepare for the impending confrontation. As the sounds of chaos grew louder, Elena's heart raced. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. This was not just a fight for survival, but a battle for the very soul of humanity. Within moments, the rogue faction breached the perimeter, a throng of masked figures flooding into the facility. They were armed and aggressive, their voices raised in fervor as they shouted slogans that echoed with the primal power of rage. "Humanity for humans. Reject the alien influence." Elena's heart sank as she recognized the faces of some of the faction members. They were people she once knew, scientists, scholars, and community leaders who had turned to radicalism. Their eyes glinted with fervor, blinded by their belief in a distorted vision of purity. "Get behind me," she shouted to the delegates, positioning herself as a shield. "We have to protect our message at all costs." Silara's voice rang out from the shadows. "Elena, we need to evacuate the civilians. They are not our enemies. They are being manipulated." As the rogue faction charged forward, chaos erupted. Elena fought to hold the line, her resolve hardened by the conviction that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and fear, and she could see that the rift in humanity was wider than she had anticipated. But as the skirmish escalated, a sudden explosion rocked the facility, sending debris flying. Elena instinctively dove to the ground, her heart pounding. When she looked up, she saw Silara standing at the forefront, her presence commanding and fierce. "Listen," Silara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This is not the way. We are all part of this galaxy together. Unity is our only strength." The faction members paused, momentarily taken aback by the alien's words. Some hesitated, glancing at one another, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Elena seized the moment. "We must not let fear dictate our actions," she yelled, pushing herself to her feet. "These extremists want to divide us, but we have the power to choose a different path. Join us in seeking cooperation over conflict." But before she could finish, the rogue leader emerged from the crowd, a figure cloaked in shadows and fury. "You're traitors," he spat, pointing a finger at Silara and Elena. "You think you can sway the people with your alien lies. We will not be subjugated." The crowd erupted again, but this time the chaos was laced with doubt. Elena felt a flicker of hope as she witnessed some members stepping back, questioning their loyalty to a cause that had now become synonymous with violence and hatred. In that moment, she knew they had to press on. "Stand with us, not against us. We have the power to shape a future that embraces all beings, human and alien alike." As she spoke, The tide of the crowd began to shift. The clash of ideologies hung in the balance, and Elena could sense that the turning point was near. The battle for humanity's future was not just a fight for survival. It was a struggle for the hearts and minds of their very species. The tension in the facility crackled like electricity as Elena's words hung in the air. For a brief moment, the chaos surrounding them faded into the background, and all eyes were on her. The rogue leader, cloaked in shadows, appeared momentarily stunned by her passionate declaration. It was an opening, a fragile opportunity to shift the tide of conflict. "Don't listen to her," he shouted, regaining his composure. "She's just a pawn of the aliens, trying to undermine our sovereignty." His voice rang with desperation, but Elena could see cracks forming in his facade. Some members of the rogue faction exchanged uneasy glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. "Look around you," Elena urged, gesturing to the frightened civilians and her allies. "This violence only breeds more violence. We are stronger together. Alone, we risk losing everything: our homes, our families, our very humanity." Silara stepped forward, her presence commanding as she raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "We are not your enemies. I am Silara of the Celestial Council. I come in peace, seeking to understand and support humanity, not control it. We share this galaxy, and together we can thrive. But we cannot do that through division and hatred." A murmur spread through the crowd, the tension palpable. Some of the rogue faction members hesitated, their resolve waning. Elena seized the moment, pushing forward with her message. "We are all afraid of the unknown. We have faced challenges that threaten our existence, but we can either face them as enemies or unite as allies. This is our chance to forge a new path." In the crowd, a voice called out, a familiar one. "Elena, is that you?" It was Ava, a former colleague who had once been a champion of human-alien relations. "You're right. We can't let fear control us." Encouraged by Ava's support, others began to step forward, voices rising in agreement. "We need to find a better way." One man shouted, emboldened by the momentum. The rogue leader's face contorted in anger and desperation. "Don't let them fool you. They want to take everything from us." His words fell flat, overshadowed by the growing chorus of voices calling for unity. Elena could see a significant portion of the faction wavering, their loyalty to a cause now in question. The atmosphere shifted from one of chaos to a burgeoning sense of hope. "Remember who you are," Elena implored, her voice resonating with conviction. "You are not the monsters they have made you believe you are. You are people, mothers, fathers, friends, just like us. We can build a better future together." The rogue leader's grip on the crowd weakened as their resolve began to crumble. A few more members broke away, stepping back from the front lines, shaking their heads in disbelief. "We've been missiled," one of them admitted, glancing around at the faces of the people he once called allies. With the crowd beginning to fracture, the rogue leader turned his ire toward Silara. "This isn't over. You may have swayed some, but we will never submit." He raised his weapon, aiming it at the alien delegate. Time seemed to slow as Elena's heart pounded in her chest. "No," she shouted, rushing forward to interpose herself between Silara and the rogue leader. "This isn't the answer." In that moment of confrontation, she felt the weight of all their struggles, the fear, the anger, and the hope for a united future. "You don't have to fight," she implored, her voice trembling with emotion. "We can talk this out. You don't have to choose violence." The rogue leader hesitated, his weapon shaking in his grip. His eyes flickered between Elena and Silara, caught between the conviction of his beliefs and the emerging doubts that now clouded his judgment. Then, the impossible happened. One by one, other faction members began to step back, lowering their weapons. "We want peace," a woman shouted, tears in her eyes. "This isn't who we are." Elena's heart soared as a wave of realization swept through the crowd. The power of unity was breaking through the walls of fear and hatred. With the rogue leader now isolated, Elena took a deep breath, realizing the moment was ripe for reconciliation. "It's not too late to change," she said softly, her voice carrying a tone of understanding. "Join us in rebuilding what has been broken. We can forge a new path together, one of hope, cooperation, and understanding." Slowly, the rogue leader lowered his weapon. Confusion etched across his face. The power of community, of shared humanity, had pierced through the chaos, illuminating a path forward. As the crowd erupted in cheers of support, Alina felt a surge of triumph wash over her. This was not just a battle won. It was a monumental step toward healing the rift in humanity. And together, they could shape a brighter future. The tide of chaos had begun to turn, but the fight for unity was just beginning. As the cheers of support echoed throughout the underground facility, a wave of relief washed over Alina. The rogue leader stood frozen, his weapon lowered, as the atmosphere shifted from hostility to tentative hope. Alina could see that the crowd was beginning to understand the power of unity over division, and that realization sparked a new determination within her. "Let's gather everyone," she urged, turning to Xilara and the delegates. "We need to talk, to share our experiences. If we're going to heal this divide, we have to do it together." Xilara nodded, her eyes gleaming with the understanding of the moment's significance. "Yes, we must create a space for dialogue. Let's move to a larger area where we can address everyone. The time for secrets and lies has passed." As they began to organize the crowd, the energy shifted. The rogue members who had once clung to the banners of division were now standing alongside their former enemies. Some offered hesitant smiles, others exchanged awkward handshakes. The barrier that had once divided them was slowly crumbling. Alina led the way to a spacious conference room, the walls adorned with monitors and displays. The delegates gathered in a circle, and she took her place at the center, looking out at the crowd. "Thank you all for coming here today," she began, her voice steady and inviting. "We are standing on the brink of something incredible, a chance for humanity to redefine itself." The room fell silent, eyes fixed on her. "We have faced turmoil and strife, driven by fear and misunderstanding. But today, we choose a different path. Today, we choose to engage with one another, to listen, and to learn." One of the former rogue faction members, a man named Theo, raised his hand. "I want to speak," he said, his voice trembling. "I was part of the faction. I believed we needed to expel all alien influence, that we were being overrun. But seeing everyone here today makes me question everything. My family, my daughter, she deserves a future, not one defined by hate. How do we move forward from here?" Alina felt a surge of empathy for Theo, recognizing the deep-seated fears that had driven him into extremism. "That's a powerful question, Theo. We start by sharing our stories, our fears, and our hopes. Let's begin to build bridges, not walls." As the discussions unfolded, individuals shared their personal experiences, stories of loss, of fear, and of hope. The room became a tapestry of voices, weaving together the complex emotions that had fueled division. Xilara spoke next, her voice a soothing balm. "As an alien delegate, I understand the fears that arise from the unknown. But I also believe in the strength of our shared experiences. We have more in common than we realize. Our desires for peace, safety, and prosperity bind us together." As the dialogue continued, Alina felt the energy in the room shift. Old wounds were beginning to heal as new understandings emerged. The former rogue faction members expressed their feelings of abandonment, of being left behind in a rapidly changing world, while the human delegates shared their fears of losing their identity amidst a galaxy of alien cultures. Alina encouraged them all to think of solutions. What if we created programs that encourage collaboration between humans and aliens, initiatives that foster understanding and integration? Together, we could create a future where both sides thrive. The room buzzed with energy as people began to discuss tangible ideas. They talked about community outreach programs, cultural exchange initiatives, and joint research projects aimed at solving some of humanity's greatest challenges. But then, just as the conversation seemed to reach a hopeful crescendo, the alarms in the facility blared once more. An urgent voice cut through the noise. Security breach. Unknown forces are infiltrating the facility again. Lock down all exits. Panic surged through the crowd as Elena felt the familiar grip of fear tightening. But this time, instead of chaos, there was a collective resolve. "We have faced violence before," she said, raising her voice to calm the crowd. "But we are stronger together. We cannot allow fear to tear us apart again." As the delegates gathered their thoughts, Elena turned to Xilara, who stood resolutely at her side. "This is a test of our newfound unity. We must defend what we've started here today. Together, we can show that our bond is stronger than any force that seeks to divide us." The room erupted into action as delegates moved to secure exits and prepare for what was coming. Elena could feel the determination in the air, a shared commitment to protect their fledgling alliance. They had begun to build something beautiful, a connection that transcended fear, and now they would fight to preserve it. As the sound of footsteps echoed through the halls, the moment of reckoning had arrived. Together, they would face whatever threat lay ahead, united in their cause. The atmosphere in the conference room shifted from anxiety to a steely determination as the delegates prepared for the incoming threat. Elena stood at the front, her heart racing, but her mind clear. "We will not allow fear to dictate our future," she declared, her voice resonating with strength. "We are united in our cause, and we will stand together." As they scrambled to fortify their defenses, delegates from both sides worked side by side, hastily forming barricades and gathering makeshift weapons. A group of tech experts quickly set up a communication network, ensuring that they could stay connected and coordinate their actions. Xilara turned to Elena, her eyes fierce. "If they want to break us, they will have to face the consequences. We stand not just for ourselves, but for everyone who believes in cooperation and peace." Elena nodded, her resolve deepening. "Agreed. Let's prepare to counter any attack and protect what we've built today." Moments later, the doors burst open, and a group of rogue faction members stormed in, their faces twisted with anger and desperation. The rogue leader, now fully unmasked, stood at the forefront, flanked by his most loyal followers. "You think you can change things? We are here to finish what we started," he shouted, his voice filled with fury. Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding. "This is not the way. You don't have to do this. You can still join us in creating a better future." The rogue leader scoffed, pointing his weapon toward her. "You're a traitor to your kind. You've sold out to the aliens." His words ignited the anger of his followers, who surged forward, fists clenched and weapons raised. But before they could attack, a voice called out from the back of the room. "Stop." It was Theo, who had stepped away from the rogue faction. "This isn't what we stood for. We are stronger together, not as enemies." His words hung in the air like a lifeline, and for a moment, hesitation flickered across the faces of the rogue faction members. Elena seized the moment to push forward. "You all know what this fight really means. It's not about alien influence or human purity. It's about survival, about protecting our families and our future. Do we want to be remembered as a generation that fought among ourselves, while threats loomed beyond our stars?" The rogue leader hesitated, caught between his anger and the reality of the moment. But the tension was palpable, and it was clear that they were at a crossroads. Just then, a loud explosion rocked the facility, shaking the walls and sending debris flying. The lights flickered, and the crowd instinctively fell into a defensive stance. The sound of shouting and chaos echoed from the corridors outside. Elena turned to Xilara. "We need to act now. If we can unite against this common threat, we might just sway the rest of them." Xilara nodded, her determination unwavering. "Agreed. We'll stand together, as one. This is our moment to show that unity prevails over chaos. Then let's move." Elena shouted. "We'll meet this threat head-on. Together. Protect one another." As the delegates braced themselves, they formed a united front. The human and alien delegates stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces set with resolve. The rogue faction members, now caught in the middle, looked on in confusion. "Let's show them the power of unity," Elena called, charging toward the door. The delegates followed, their hearts pounding in unison. As they stepped out into the chaos, they were met with a scene of utter turmoil. The facility was under siege, with rogue members clashing against their opponents, both alien and human, who sought to protect the newfound alliance. But this time, they were not fighting for division. They were fighting for a common purpose. With every step, Elena felt a wave of determination wash over her. The moment was surreal, a chaotic blend of hope and fear, but she was ready to stand her ground. "Push back," she shouted, rallying the group as they surged forward. "We will not let this fight define us. We will show them that humanity's strength lies in its unity." In that fierce moment, as she fought alongside former foes, Elena understood that they were not just battling for their lives. They were battling for their future, a future where cooperation, understanding, and respect reigned over division and chaos. With every blow exchanged and every voice raised in unison, they forged a bond that transcended fear and hatred. They were not just fighting a physical battle. They were reclaiming their identity as a unified force. Together, they would create a new story for humanity, a story of resilience, courage, and hope, one that would echo through the ages. As the tide of the conflict shifted and the echoes of their rallying cries filled the air, Elena knew that they had taken the first crucial steps toward a future where all beings could thrive together. And no matter what lay ahead, they would face it as one, united against the darkness that threatened to divide them.